If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. That's a direct quote from Mark Carney admitting that Canada cannot take on the US in a trade war. But don't worry, the mainstream media was there to defend Mark Carney, which I think backfired, and attack Donald Trump. Surprise, surprise. This is all while we are getting updates from the Ukraine-Russia peace talks where Donald Trump is stacking more wins, along with his new announcements that he's going to take on China in a few key sectors that will affect America's sovereignty. Speaking of sovereignty, Canada is showing they have no serious way of defending our own, being proven by one of the most embarrassing announcements I've seen from a Canadian agency to date. Canada lost another factory to the US because of elbows up and Mark Carney and his squad. Now Quebec is losing all faith in being part of Canada. They might leave, guys. We might get lucky and Quebec might finally leave. There is a ton to talk about in today's video, especially Ottawa's updated response on how they're dealing with all of these problems. So let's get into it. So if you guys remember in yesterday's video, I said the mainstream media was going to be silent about Mark Carney not getting invited. They probably should have taken my advice because they weren't silent, and look at how they showed how much impact Mark Carney's having as a serious leader of Canada. This 30-second clip is so embarrassing.
As we speak this morning in talks aimed at building on developments from that extraordinary White House summit aimed at ending Russia's war in Ukraine. We have some new images of Prime Minister Mark Carney from that conversation this morning, frame grabs from the virtual meeting.
Did you hear that? We have new images, frame grabs from the virtual meeting. That's the best Mark Carney could get as the neighbor of the United States, as one of the largest donators to Ukraine. He's met with Zelensky multiple times personally. Canada is in charge of some of NATO's forces at some of these borders there. Like, this is insane that Mark Carney didn't get invited. And the mainstream media thinks they're running cover for him by saying we got screenshots of him in the corner of a Zoom meeting. Oh my gosh, wait till you see the shots.
That was co-chaired by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron. You can make out the Prime Minister there in the lower part of the screen.
You have got to be kidding. This is the best. This is the national news. This is the nationwide news of Canada. And this is the best thing that they can do. This is live breaking news, is a screenshot zoomed in to this blurry square of Mark Carney in the corner. Holy smokes, Canada's not a serious country.
The focus for the meeting this morning, security guarantees for Ukraine. And we will be watching for an official statement from the Prime Minister's office as to anything that has come from that meeting later today.
I'm going to say it again. This was live breaking news. Holy freaking smokes. That is embarrassing because, as we know, it's supposed to be elbows up time. And wait till I get to that clip of Mark Carney admitting Canada cannot take on the US and we're on the US's menu. So this whole thing's nonsense. They try to run as much cover as they can for Mark Carney against Donald Trump. We have so many videos that have been titled "Easy for Putin to Manipulate Trump." Canada's mainstream media was covered with videos titled how, oh, people unsure if Trump can pull this off. Trump said he was going to get this done in 24 hours. He didn't. That means he lied. Oh, Putin's manipulating Trump. He's the little puppet. Like, this is how they want to play this. So Trump's a puppet. He's getting manipulated. He's so dumb. Mark Carney is in the corner of a Zoom call. You've zoomed in as if he's making decisions and he's a big part of this meeting. Donald Trump is the leader of the free world. He brought almost all of freaking Europe to his doorstep, to his desk. They sat in a circle just to listen to him talk. Do you understand the optics here, Canadians? Do you understand the optics here, world? Anybody who's like, yeah, Canada's taking on the US. Like, this is crazy. And look at this first 2 minutes here. Of course, they bring on an expert. Oh, yeah, Donald Trump, he's so easy to manipulate.
After last Friday's summit between the American and Russian presidents seemed to move Donald Trump away from the idea of a ceasefire, European leaders were at the White House on Monday in a show of force to support Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky's sit-down with Trump was far more cordial than his first, with both men nearly eye to eye on wanting to find a solution.
The outcome, I think, is, on the one hand, first of all, positive. You know, we have seen that Europe speaks with a united voice. We have seen that Trump is taking that into consideration.
I think one of the quotes from the European leaders was Trump's got more done today than we have in the last 3.5 years. Like, these are real big moves in the peace talks.
And we have seen that Zelensky's, let's say, demands were at least regarded also as appropriate.
I think in his eyes, Trump is playing a role of the mediator. So certainly he does not see himself as aligning with either side. However, I would say that it's easy, it's not very hard to kind of sway Donald Trump and to manipulate his position. He clearly does not have a very deep understanding of history of relations between Russia and Ukraine, of history of promises that were broken by Russia, or maybe he doesn't really care about that much.
So Trump's easy to manipulate. He has no idea what's going on. He has no idea the history. Look, maybe Trump's not the absolute history buff. I don't know. I'm not going to speak to how much he knows about. But Trump's not exactly a young man. He would have seen all of this stuff happen. He would have lived through all of the Cold War. So to say he's completely ignorant to all of these things, I don't know if that's true.
Sees the situation in kind of a very black and white a manner. So he sees a big country, a much bigger country with a bigger army, with big, vaster resources, a nuclear armed country that dominated also its neighbor for many, many years and centuries.
The Canadian media can continue to try and undercut Trump in these peace deals. Everybody wants this done, literally everyone. When you see the coverage on the other side and they talk about how much power Trump has in this negotiation, I don't think he's the one getting manipulated. And you'll see shortly with the Mark Carney clip, Canada doesn't have much power.
Joining me now is former CIA covert operations officer Mike Baker. Mike, great to see you. Trump raised the possibility of Putin not agreeing to a deal. Is that likely?
Yeah, I think that's a very possible scenario. Look, right now, Putin, I don't think sees any downside to continuing the war. I know we all talk about his economy, and his economy is fragile, but he's not seeing from the U.S. or from the EU the sort of aggressive economic pressure that they've been talking about. It's one thing to say we're going to slap these extra sanctions and the secondary sanctions on. Look, China is the #1 consumer of oil. India's #2.
You know, I really don't always agree with Mike Baker's opinions on these things because actually, you just said the Russian economy is extremely fragile. They are feeling pressure. And this is why I don't understand. Everybody's always default is stick instead of carrot. And I think, you know, you've got America, white Christian nation, Russia, white Christian nation. Is there a way that there turns out they're actually aligned on a lot more things and could get along? Like, why would Putin not be motivated? Like you said, I don't see there'd be no reason why he would want to end the war. Maybe he would want to end the war, get rid of the sanctions, and become a part of the global economy again. Because I guarantee you, if Russia ever somehow got a trade deal with the U.S., BRICS would fall apart in 2 seconds, and all of the global power again would continue to be centralized in the U.S.
And yes, we've put a 25% secondary tariff on India, but I don't think, given the way the Trump administration is acting in terms of their China trade conversations.
And the whole India thing, like India was getting 1% of their oil allegedly from Russia before the sanctions. Then in India fashion, they said, hey, buddy, I think we can scam. So they scammed. They bought the Russian oil. They used it to profiteer and sell it to other places. And they said, no, buddy, Indian oil, I swear, buddy, best oil, no problem. And then all of a sudden it's like, where did you get the oil from? You didn't have it before. And they're like, buddy, just buy oil, no problem. And then it's like, okay, people started to buy the oil. India started scamming, making money. Surprise, surprise. But now we could cut that off as well.
That they're going to be willing to put secondary tariffs on China while they're still trying to sort out a deal. And I think Putin has read that. And so I think he looks at it and goes, hey, I'm going to hold out until I get exactly what I want. His list of demands haven't really changed over the past couple of years.
But, looking at the sincerity of the people in that room about wanting to get some kind of deal done, all those European leaders, and the president made all those last-minute moves after his meeting with Putin on Sunday night, early Monday morning, got them all together, received the praise he did. I really think that Trump wants a deal right now more than anything in the world, and he is willing to play hardball if necessary, economic hardball with Putin, don't you? And that That would probably, I mean, that would be so serious. Granted, the reports might be overstated about how bad the economy is in Russia, but even so, what Donald Trump could do immediately to cripple the Russian economy would be something to behold.
Yeah, of course. Trump holds all the power right now. He's negotiating all these trade deals. And again, I actually think we should try carrot. We get the war done. We get everybody agreed to a peace deal, 100%. And then we say, hey, Russia, do you want to enter the global economy? You want to start working with people? Maybe we can remove the sanctions if you stop the war. I don't know. Why haven't we tried it? Speaking of trade deals, here's a clip of Mark Carney literally saying Canada is going to get gobbled up by the U.S. And in this video, he says Canada cannot take on the U.S. And this was before the elbows up. It was 100% a fake campaign. He took advantage of the liberal boomers and how easy they are to control in Canada. The liberal voting boomers in Canada might be the most controllable, easy to hypnotize group of people in the entire world, honestly. Have you liked the video yet? We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you like what we talk about here, feel free to subscribe. Love to have you on board. We've got so many new subscribers lately. Thank you, everybody who joined. It's great to have you on board. Let's get back to it.
As I said at the start, the world's largest economies are pursuing aggressive industrial policies and they're restricting trade access. Canada can't afford an arms race with the US and the Europeans. And we can no longer rely on a rules-based international order for market access. As a middle power today, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
You heard it here first, folks. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. We're a middle power. We cannot handle an arms or trade race with the U.S. Again, this was before elbows up, before the campaign switched to that slogan. He knew. You stupid liberal voting boomers got duped.
We need to be smarter. We need to focus on our key sectors. We need to create a coherent tax system. We need to train our people to master their machines. We need to build our core competencies from clean energy to compute. And we need to make ourselves the, and I mean the essential trading partner of the United States and our allies.
Okay, wow, that's a real change in narrative from where we were before.
Not through a deal, but by being the backbone of enterprise AI, by being the most sophisticated real asset investors in the world, by being the most reliable supplier of critical minerals.
Wow, surprising mention of critical minerals there, which applies to this next story, which is very important. War in Ukraine shaping Canada's approach to Arctic sovereignty, Anand says. So we have this entire article where they talk about the concerns of Russia having access to Canada's Arctic and how that's a threat to Canada's sovereignty. In this entire article, they don't mention China once. Guess who's Canada's #1 competitor for critical minerals? Guess who is probably the #1 global risk for critical minerals? China. That's interesting. A liberal politician failed to mention China. I wonder why, when we have articles like this coming out, that China has sent 5 research ships to the Arctic waters, and it says off the US coast. But if you trail all of these lines here, yeah, that's right into Canada right there. So maybe that's a bit of a concern. Maybe that might have an issue with Canada's sovereignty when Chinese research ships are coming into Canada's coastal waters, this deep into it. Oh no, Russia's the issue. How dare we bring up China? Of course, we got to be worried about Russia, not China, because the Liberal Party is not compromised at all. Actually, let's check in with Canada's security agency. Keep in mind, this is the equivalent of Canada's CIA. Surely they're investigating this stuff, right? Here we have a big announcement from Canada's CIA. Back in June, CSIS launched its Pride season celebrations with a few guest speakers. Thanks to the talented Two-Spirit hoop dancers, McKenna Rankin-Guerin, and the hilarious Canadian comedienne Alva Val, and inspirational public servant David De Silva for visiting, performing, and speaking at CSIS HQ. Visit the Pride Network for details on how to continue celebrating with activities through this week. Public Service Pride Week, Public Service Pride. Wow, this is Canada's CIA. We are concerned about Arctic sovereignty. We have so many issues, and this is what Canada's CIA is focused on. I don't think Canada actually cares about sovereignty, especially when we have this insane trending story right now. Lindsay, Ontario man charged after allegedly assaulting home intruder, police say. Alleged intruder and homeowner were both facing charges, say Kawartha Lakes police. That is despicable to me. Listen to this story. A man from Lindsay, Ontario is facing assault charges for allegedly injuring an intruder in his home, according to local police. According to the police, the resident had woken up to find an intruder inside his apartment. The two had an altercation, and the intruder suffered life-threatening injuries, police say, and was later airlifted to Toronto Hospital. Police say the resident is facing charges for aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. The alleged intruder, 41, also facing charges including breaking and entering and possession of a weapon for dangerous purposes. Police say the man was also wanted for unrelated offenses. So here we have a man sleeping in his own home in Canada when a wanted criminal, what a surprise, a wanted criminal is on the streets in Ontario, that never happens, breaks into his home. He defends himself from a wanted and armed violent criminal. And by defending himself, he's now getting charged. This is despicable. If you are the Crown lawyer on this case, you better toss it out instantly, or this will be another global embarrassment for Canada. If this is the sovereignty that Canada is elbows up for, if this is the sovereignty that Canada is somehow fighting for, that we don't want to be part of the US, bring on the 51st state. You could not make us the 51st state faster, in my mind, if these are the rights that you're going to defend in Canada. You know, I don't even care. Have Russia take us over. I don't even care, because this is so embarrassing. I feel horrible for this guy who was attacked in his own home and he's now getting charged. Even if it gets dropped, imagine the stress of having to go through that. And as Canada is chasing its own tail with dumb problems like that, the US has real moves. US targets Chinese steel and lithium for forced labor scrutiny. The US is making real serious moves to continue to hold the title of #1 global superpower. They're taking on China. Canada can't even defend themselves in their own home. They talk about the rare earth minerals in this video, like Mark Carney that said before the election, Canada should have been on top of. And now they're taking on China, saying, we don't want that. That's a security issue. How is it that America is starting to consider Canada a security threat? That's insane, especially when you see announcements like this and the missed opportunity that Canada had.
What we are trying to do in this administration is we are trying to de-risk our relationship with China. There's 6, 7 strategic industries that we saw during COVID that the Chinese were not reliable suppliers. We're also seeing with rare earth magnets, they've imposed export controls. So we are going to become self-sufficient and dominant in those areas.
Almost, not all of, but almost all of those industries could have been supplied and built between the US and Canada working together. Yes, it would take a lot of investment. It would take a lot of commitment. But if Canada and the US had worked together between the supply, the refining, all of the options, it would have been another step in building Fortress America, so both of those countries could not only prosper, provide more protection and sovereignty for themselves. It's so far from being a trade war right now. It's become a trade massacre because America just won another factory. This is a factory closing in Canada.
50 jobs in Sudbury have been cut as Wonder Brands ends sliced bread production. The unionized employees belong to Local 175 of the United Food and Commercial Workers. The company will eliminate all part-time positions and several full-time roles at the facility. The bread line shutdown is slated for October 6th. The union is actively engaged in discussions with Wonder Brands to help members receive the support they need, including transition programs, retraining opportunities, and support services.
These workers are covered by a collective bargaining agreement, and so there is severance provisions and retirement options available.
Oh, good. That's what Canada needs. We need more people retired. We need more factories moving down to the US. And I looked it up. I tried to find out if they announced where this factory is actually going to move to. And there's a couple things here. You might hear at face value, well, it was only 50 jobs. It's not a big deal. One, that's in a smaller community. So it actually is a big deal. Two, this is death by 1,000 cuts as all of these factories choose, well, maybe some of our satellite locations that are not as important to us, we could just tack that onto the production that's already in America or move it on to where we were looking at investing in America, and that's going to leave Canada. Canada's already barely creating any private sector jobs as it stands. Almost everything has been public sector. So we can't lose these private companies. Canada can't afford this. This is a way bigger deal. It's because for some reason, Mark Carney and the Liberals decided to make a completely contentious relationship, run an entire campaign against America. But one piece of good news is the Liberals have gone just insane enough where Quebec might actually leave.
The Parti Québécois has claimed another by-election victory, this time in Arthabaska. It doesn't change who runs the province, but it reignites an old debate, Quebec sovereignty. The PQ is now won 3 by-elections in a row, a streak that's putting them back in a political spotlight.
It's more that the party is giving that most clear, legible, and dynamic option in lieu of the sitting government. It's an atmosphere or a mood for change that is dictating this.
So, 2 quick points here. 1, how come the media's not attacking Quebec for their sovereignty? How come they're running puff pieces for Quebec sovereignty? How come it's only a big deal when Alberta wants to leave, but if Quebec wants to leave, it's a good thing? Second of all, get out of here, Quebec. If you do want to leave, it is a good thing. All you guys do is complain and make everything harder. So I'm not fighting for Quebec to stay. Don't get me wrong. I'm just calling out the double standard.
These wins are sparking sovereignty talks in unexpected places, including classrooms and campus groups.
It's giving us hope for the future, and it's something that we saw in the past months, and now with the concrete number, we can now say that it's not just a feeling; it's actually something that's concrete.
Quebec's sovereignty debate has spanned decades, from referendums in the 1980 and 1995 to the renewed excitements we're hearing today. A recent poll conducted by the Canadian marketing and research firm Crop suggests a rise in support for Quebec's sovereignty among young people. 56% of people between the ages of 18 to 34 say they are in favor.
The future that we present.
Nice, not bad, not bad.
Them is pretty dark, and in a way, the status quo brings a feeling of desperation almost to them. So they need solutions that are systemic because they think that the system itself needs to change, and the independence project is exactly that.
So not only does the system need to change, people in Quebec somehow complained about Alberta wanting to leave. So for them, it's okay to want to leave. Alberta, it's bad. Canada is so divided, and it's because our leadership has no idea what's going on. But as we're losing companies to the US, as our politicians are getting embarrassed on the global stage, Quebec's about to leave. Alberta might actually leave. Surely Ottawa, our nation's capital, is going to be focused on the big issues. Let's check in there.
The flag is up as Capital Pride Week begins in Ottawa, a celebration of the 2S LGBTQ+ community.
Okay.
Have one of the biggest pride parades again that the city has ever seen. We're really excited.
The Pride Parade is set for Sunday. Last year, the event faced controversy after the Capital Pride Board released a statement in solidarity with Palestinians amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. A number of groups pulled out of the parade. Capital Pride's executive
This is really funny. Look at the guy in the background. Look at the guy in the background. Okay, listen to what the newscaster's saying. Look at the guy in the background.
Director Callie Melter says this year will be going ahead with returning members.
We have over 165 groups joining us for this year. The numbers are all looking, equivalent to 22 numbers, 23 numbers, 24 numbers.
Last year, the city had a float, but most councillors and the mayor were not in attendance. This year, the pro-Palestinian statement has been removed from Capital Pride's website.
Oh, has it? Okay, so the statement's not involved at all? Let's see. Let's go back quickly. I love that the guys in the background, as the news is like, you know what? The statement's been removed from the website. We're separating ourselves from the movement. There we go. There you have it. Once again, Mark Carney getting globally embarrassed, and the best they can do is screenshots, even though Mark Carney himself is admitting Canada can't take on the U.S. We're living in a fantasy world in Canada that for some reason thinks Canada can stand up to the U.S. We have no economic foundation to do so. We should be working with them, building Fortress America, because if Canada and the U.S. work together, even if you remove 51st state, just get a strong economic partnership where everybody wins. It would be the most prosperous stretch of land in the entire world. It's insane that we are letting the liberals run us into the ground, especially with announcements and updates like that. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, there is a link down below. You can do it through YouTube as well. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.